Let's look at Okay, folks. I don't know. I want to do some other kind of look. Let me do another look. Let me do the hair down look. Okay, I think I like this. Let's do the hair down look. Hi, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Good afternoon, sweet mommy. Oh, I forgot to hit the go live on TikTok. Today is a kind of brisk day, and I want to take advantage of it. I want to go play hooky and watch a movie. I'm supposed to be working, but I'm going to go play hooky and go watch a movie. I think I want to watch something sci-fi-ish, like Avatar. Now, there's another one that's coming out called Hail Mary, and I kind of read the description of Hail Mary, and it looks like it's going to be a good one. So, hello, Eileen. Ononuga on Eileen Onwanga. Hi. Hello, Miss Kiona. Hi, Mrs. Allen. Welcome to today's class. We have an interesting one, the wicked co-wife and the singing bird. After a while, with these African tales, especially the West African tales, I have to say this before we get into it. Okay. I have a challenge with many of these problems presenting the women as the problem. They're like, oh, yeah, it's a wicked stepmother. Even the European stories too, it's usually there's the issues with the woman. So it's usually the women that they present as having the issues. Okay. So that tells me that it's been a long time people have had challenges with understanding and managing the feminine energy. That's how I interpret that. Happy St. Patrick's Day to you too, Mrs. Allen. Yeah, that lets me know that it's been a while people have had issues with the feminine energy. Because if we're looking at a majority of these folk tales is about something happening to women or women doing something to somebody, it's just a few of the stories where, it's the men doing something. So people are struggling with the feminine energy, managing the feminine energy, accepting the feminine energy, balancing the feminine energy. That's my interpretation of that. To those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Tochi, aka Papa Dr. Tochi, mom of the men's and the women's, the boys and the girls. And my website is at tochi.us or drtochi.com, where you can book your spiritual consultations, dream interpretations with me. Also, see events that I have. We have level 1, Reclaim Your Authority, starting next Sunday. I am so excited. And the week after that, starting on March the 29th, we have level 2, Embody Your Authority. I am so glad, actually, now because tomorrow is the last day of the Ramadan and Lent fast. And I'm ready for this. I'm ready to revisit myself. So, I'll try my best to also do my own work while I'm, facilitating the retreat. But I think it's so needed. Tomorrow is also going to be the new moon. On Friday is the spring equinox. Okay. I mean, there's just so much going on. I just think that the scheduling of those two retreats was actually fortuitous. Okay. Um, the spring equinox is going to be on Friday. I already have classes on YT here, okay, that you can go to and know how to conduct your rituals for those days. Um, those four solar events, the equinoxes and the solstices. I already published that material since last week or not last week, last year or the year before. So regardless of the hemisphere you're living in, okay, regardless of the hemisphere you're living in, you should be able to find the ritual and conduct the ritual. Now, for this spring equinox, we'll have a spiritual community gathering. Okay. So if you are a member, you are invited to the gathering. It's going to be on Google Meet. It's free for all members. We're going to meet at 8 p.m. CST where we're just going to chat. Okay. It's not going to be a lecture. We're just going to chat, get to know one another if you just want to hang out. Because one of the things I know that people are worried about is, okay, I'm on the spiritual path and I don't know anybody else who's on the spiritual path. Okay. So, um, people have made great friends uh, through community because you get to know other people who are spiritual just like yourself. Um, and when I have spiritual community, I am not restricting that to any religion or spiritual tradition or path or anything like that. It's not my job to police that. My job is just to provide the space for people to meet. So that's free for all members on Friday, 8 p.m. CST. Okay. The link has been posted for members on Patreon. I will be posting the link on YouTube on the community page, community tab on YouTube. So if you are a member on YouTube, you should be able to find that link on the community tab. And then at 10 p.m., so 2 hours after that, the advanced members and I will go ahead and conduct the um, ancestor healing ritual. Okay. So the last one we did, which was the winter solstice, that was open to all members. So the one for the spring equinox is just going to be open to the advanced members. So if you are an advanced member, I encourage you to join us at 10 p.m. CST this Friday. It's going to be on the spring equinox, and we want to take advantage of that solar event. Okay. Hi, Speedo. Okay. So we do have a lot of things going on. Okay. We have a lot of things going on. So there's again the level one reclaim your authority retreat that will be starting on Sunday, and that's for 7 days. Then we have the spring equinox with the ancestor healing ritual going on Friday, this Friday. Okay, 10 p.m. CST. Then we have the spiritual community, the gathering, this Friday. okay, for all members. Are the advanced members on Patreon? Yes, the advanced members are on Patreon. We also have and the advanced members are Apprentice Plus. The apprentice or the folks who are right under apprentice, they also have their own lectures and rituals and stuff that they do. And these are not at the Pathfinder level. Now, Pathfinder, I just left that on YouTube for people who just, want to be part of the community and, come in and catch, member materials now and then. But, it's just watching. It's not synchronous, it's asynchronous unless they catch me during a live like this. Um, the apprentice level, they get a little bit more material. We do some rituals. We learn about rituals, we learn about different things. And then the apprentice plus is also hands on, but more hands on. We do more advanced material in the invented. Now, Apprentice Plus, I've just put it at this point that Apprentice Plus um, is just going to be admission by interview because before I just opened it up to anybody who was like, hey, I got the money and I can pay. And I haven't always been impressed by the quality of people who will be there for the simple reason that people will sign up for Apprentice Plus and they won't show up for the rituals, they don't show up for the classes. They're always wanting, oh, just a video I can watch. They're just wanting videos I can watch. And my vision for Apprentice Plus is demonstration. I want you to be able to demonstrate what you're learning. Apprentice Plus is the demonstration level. So it's not just sitting back and listening to lectures, relaxing and listening to lectures. No, Apprentice Plus is demonstration. So, um, so that's why I was like, okay, any future admissions to Apprentice Plus will be by interview. I want to know what you've done, how you've done it, and so forth. Okay. Because it doesn't make sense that, you know, we prepare the material, we want to practice what we're learning. And, folks just be wanting like a video. Oh, I just want a video I can watch on demand. Oh, so Apprentice Plus is demonstration level. So not only do you learn about rituals and stuff, but you also demonstrate and you practice it. You answer questions. You go through the thought process. Okay. So it's not passive consumption. Okay. So I hope that clarified. Okay. So again, if you need me for your spiritual consultations, your divinations and things of that nature, you can go to my website and book that. Okay. I think I've covered everything. Well, that's it. I have it on my piece of paper here to remind me to announce that. So today we look at the wicked co-wife and the singing bird. This is also um, a story that many ethnic groups, many tribes in West Africa tell. And each ethnic group has their own slight variation on this story. Okay. But there's a story that is told in many West African tribes. Okay. And then we're going to look at the lessons we can learn from this. So, this version that we're going to look at is going to be an Igbo version. And on the surface, we see what jealousy does. Okay. And we see how that jealousy is dealt with in a spiritual manner. So, in a prosperous village, a wealthy farmer lived with his two wives. So, the same scenario. It's the same scenario with Cinderella. You know, they're they're all, there's always the first wife and the second wife, and all the other stories. So his first wife was gentle and kind, and she bore him a beautiful child whom he loved very dearly. His second wife was deeply envious of the first wife. She resented the affection that the husband showed to his first wife and her child. Okay. Now, understand that in these kinds of cultures, there are multiple reasons why a man would marry more than one wife. And it's not just because the culture allows it. Sometimes there are pragmatic reasons for doing this, but that's not the purpose of, that's not the focus of our story today. So, tragedy struck when a sudden illness claimed the life of the first wife. The husband was heartbroken, and the young child was left without protection. However, the farmer had to maintain his livelihood. Okay. As planting season approached, he prepared to leave for his distant farm settlements, a journey that will keep him away for several weeks. Now, back in the day, people would have farmland that was some distance away from their actual compounds where they lived. And that happens till today. So you can have somebody living here, but the farmland is quite a distance away because that place is not inhabited per se. Okay. And when these people go to these distant farmlands to go and farm, they spend time there because it's not practical for them to come and go every day from their homestead to the farmland because it's a distance away. So before leaving, the husband filled the family's yam barn to the brim. So, in other words, he provided for them. He made sure that there was sufficient food available before he went to go spend some time in his farm settlement. Remember, we've already treated the story of yams and why yams are important to Igbo people. If you have not seen that story, please go watch the replay on YT. Okay. Look for the story of Ahajioku or Ifejoku and Ada. Okay. So he left baskets of smoked fish, dried meat, palm oil, and vegetables. He called his surviving wife and strictly instructed her to feed all the children equally and ensure that the motherless child was well cared for until his return. So he made provision. The stocks were full. And he was very explicit. And I like the way the story starts because when we looked at the other stories, remember the man was clueless. He's like assuming that the second wife will take care of the first wife. But we're seeing here the man is very intentional. I think this is about the first story we're looking at where the man is actually intentional. He says, take care of my motherless child. So he's not like all the other stories where we looked at the man being clueless. Oh, okay, I'm just assuming she's going to take care of the child. So the moment the husband's footsteps faded from the village path, the wicked co-wife's true nature emerged. She immediately locked the yam barn and hid all those things, those stocks that her husband provided, all those provisions. She hid them in her own hut. Every day, she would cook rich, heavy meals, pounded yam fufu, and thick egusi soup packed with meat, and call only her own children into her hut to eat behind closed doors. Okay? For the motherless child, she provided nothing but cruelty. She forced the child to do all the back-breaking chores, sweeping the massive compound, fetching firewood, scrubbing pots, and so forth. When this motherless child begged for food, begged, the wicked woman would throw her some burnt yam peels, the bitter dregs of palm nut soup, or sometimes just a handful of cold ashes mixed with water. Day by day, the orphan grew skeletal, weak, covered in dirt, and she quietly wept behind the kitchen hut. Real. So we can see here that the wicked woman wasn't even giving her any real food. The yam peels were like, imagine peeling potato, and then you're giving somebody the peeled potato skins to eat. That's what this woman was giving this child. She was giving the child ashes and water. Go eat that. Go drink that. Okay. So the cries of the starving child did not go unnoticed. High up in the branches of a large Iroko tree shading the compound, a beautiful, brightly colored bird had been watching. And in these kinds of stories, birds often serve as the messengers of the spirits or the ancestors. That's an Igbo traditional belief. Okay. One afternoon, when the wicked wife was asleep after a heavy meal, the bird flew down. It dropped a fresh, ripe fruit onto the lap of the weeping child. As the starving child eagerly ate, the bird perched on a nearby fence and began to sing a haunting melodic song. The lyrics of the song sung by, yeah, try to say that quickly. The song sung by the songbird. Song. Okay. So the lyrics detailed exactly what was happening in the compound. So now we have a bird that is a witness, a bird who is like a monitoring spirit, monitoring what is going on in that compound and recording it and sharing it. And so the bird was singing, the father went to the farm. He left some food. The wicked mother hid the food. Her children are eating meat. The orphan is chewing bones. Oh God, please judge this case. The bird visited every single day, bringing wild fruits and nuts to keep the child alive, and singing its mournful song of exposure. Weeks later, the husband finally returned from his farm, carrying even more provisions. As he entered his compound, the wicked wife rushed out to greet him, wearing her finest clothes and a deceitful smile. Her children looked plump and healthy. Then her husband saw his motherless child. The child was severely malnourished, dressed in rags, and too weak to stand. Shocked and angry, the father demanded to know what had happened. The wicked wife immediately began to lie, claiming that a strange sickness had gripped the motherless child, that the child refused to eat the good food she cooked, and that she had tried everything to save this child. As the husband stood in the compound, torn between his wife's convincing lies and his child's miserable state, he's what? Looking at this. This woman is there saying, I try to feed this child. Child is sick. This is a mystery sickness. Child didn't even want to eat. And so the man is standing there and he's contemplating this thing. So, as he was torn between these two diametrically opposed situations, a sudden flutter of wings caught his attention. The beautiful bird descended from the iroko tree and landed squarely on the roof of the husband's hut. And that in itself is a significant omen. Because with that bird, remember the bird is considered the messenger of the gods, the messenger of the ancestors. With that bird landing directly on the roof of the hut of the father, it was very clear to the father, it was very clear to the man that this bird came to see him. I have come to your house, and I'm on the roof of your house. And I'm positioning myself where you can see me because I am going to tell you what has been going on. The bird mounted the man's house. The ancestors took charge of his household. So the bird puffed his chest, got ready, comfortable, and began to sing louder and clearer than before. The bird's song pierced the silence of the compound. It sang of the locked barns, the hidden meat, the closed doors, and the burnt yam peels. It sang of the woman's jealousy and her deliberate attempt to starve the motherless child into oblivion. Do you all remember the story I told you last year of this spirit that used to go around the village exposing the secrets? It would go around the village at night exposing the secrets of the villagers, the bad secrets. This is similar. Some of you might remember. Okay, Mrs. Allen, you remember the story. Yeah. The spirit that will go around at night saying, Philip is sleeping with Fred's wife. That child is not Philip's child. And in the morning, there'd be a lot of screaming and fighting and so on and so forth. Peter is stealing the yams of Dan. Dan comes home, doesn't know what's happening to his yams. That's who's stealing your yams. He comes when you're not home. And then in the morning, of course, there's a big fight. The husband listened to the magical bird, his eyes widening in realization. He pushed past his wife, walked directly to her private hut, and kicked open the door. Inside, he found the hoarded dried fish, the hidden meats, and the stolen yams. The truth was undeniably exposed. The husband's fury was absolute. He immediately stripped the wicked wife of her head ties and wrappers, symbols of her marital status, and dragged her before the village elders to face justice for attempting to transition an innocent motherless child through starvation. The wicked woman was banished in disgrace, forced to return to her maiden family, so forced to return to her father's home with nothing. Okay. In this culture, if your husband sends you home, you cannot leave with your children. If the man paid the bride price, he paid the dowry, and you've had the children, if for any reason this woman had to go, she had to go empty handed the same way that she came empty handed. When you came to my house, you didn't come with children. So now you're going back, you will go without children. That's the logic. The only way the woman could go with her children in this culture is for her or her family to pay back the dowry. You have to pay it back, every cent of it. Whatever it is that the family had demanded from the man and his family before marrying her had to be refunded. That's the only way she could take those kids with her. And in some instances, even paying back the dowry didn't guarantee. There's some villages in Igbo land, even if they pay back your dowry, there's still no guarantee that you get those kids. The man gets to keep the kids because he paid the dowry before you had the children. Now, if you didn't pay the dowry before you had the children, then you had a claim on those kids. You had a claim. Uh, An example was that I read online um, was Davido and his wife Chioma. Some of you might know. Remember, they had a beautiful son, Ifeanyi. And at that time, they were still cohabiting. And when this child passed, before the Adelikes could claim that child and do the funeral rites for that child, they had to go pay the dowry for Choma because that child was born before wedlock. They had no rights to the baby. Even though, the paperwork and everything was saying, okay, we find you as an indelicate, but the Igbo tradition, because Choma is Igbo, was that he and his family had to go pay the dowry before they could really claim that child and do whatever they needed to do for that poor baby. Okay. So the Igbo culture is particularly strong that way. Okay. So the husband took the motherless child into his own care, nursing her back to health, and the magical bird was never seen again, its duty as the voice of justice fulfilled. Now let's look at the spiritual aspects of the story. We have unrestrained feminine energy in the person of the wicked co-wife that was tilted towards the not so good instead of the good. Okay. And here we had, and remember, we said that the feminine energy is really the one that fetches the food, does the hunting, the real hunting. So we have a situation where this co-wife decided that she was going to use the agency of starvation to gain control over the motherless child. And there are times when there are people who have information for us, information, knowledge that can feed our souls. They deliberately hold that back from us because they know if we have that information, if we have that knowledge, we will grow, we will blossom, we will thrive. But they want us to be stunted. They want us to be deprived. They want us to be helpless and hopeless and unable to have self agency. And so they withhold that which is necessary for the growth of the person. I listened to a man's TikTok video yesterday that speaks to this. And he was talking about the parable of the widow's mite. If you are Christian, you're probably familiar with that story. The woman came to the synagogue and gave her mite, and that mite was MITE. She gave all the money she had. She put it in the coffers of the synagogue. She gave all that she had. And Jesus said, behold, this woman has given more than even all the rich people that are here. And this person was saying in his video, this story and the few verses are often used to encourage people to give beyond their means. It is told to compel people, to make people, to convince people to give beyond their means. Because a lot of preachers, a lot of religious leaders will point to that story and say, see, Jesus highlighted this woman to his followers and say, see, the little she gave, which was all that she had, was greater than the giving of other people who already had more than she did, because they were only giving a portion of what they had, but she was giving it all that she had. But he made a very valid point. He said a lot of times when people are quoting that story, quoting that parable, quoting those verses, they cherry pick what they want to present. They're not telling you the whole story. And in order to understand the meaning, what Jesus really meant, you need to read the whole story. You need to read the whole story. Okay? And the truth of the story is Jesus, with his followers, went to the synagogue and he was railing against the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And when you read the beginning of that chapter and the story, he starts out by saying, look at how huge these synagogues are, how mighty they are, and how they've been built beautifully and everything and whatnot. So much money, so much resources have been invested in these buildings, in these massive buildings. But all this will be destroyed. And that the Pharisees and the Sadducees were using the poor people, putting laws and all kinds of laws and regulations and all kinds of dogma on them to get them to build these massive synagogues, places of worship that will eventually be destroyed. And you're looking at these Pharisees and Sadducees, and they're wearing rich robes and looking so exotic and expensive, and they're looking so powerful. And they are using religious doctrine and psychology to get people to build these huge edifices instead of the original purpose of the offering, which was to take care of the poor and the needy. So Jesus was now saying to his followers, see how offerings, contributions, donations have been subverted. There was a subversion that was going on here. These donations and tithes and offerings and contributions were supposed to be used for the benefit of the needy, of the orphan, of the widow, the less fortunate, the sick. But instead of using these funds for that, they were being used to build these huge edifices where these religious leaders could showcase themselves. And they would have special sections for the leaders, special rooms for the leaders. They would have food and drink and all kinds of comfortable appointments for the leader. And the leaders will be there saying, give, give to the Lord's storehouse. Give, give. And the poor will keep on giving. And they will tell them, don't worry, keep on giving. What we're doing here is a reflection of what you're going to see in the hereafter. This is a mirror of what you'll see in the hereafter. And chances are they probably spuriously and fallaciously used the hermetic saying, as above, so below, as below, so above. So I'm sure they probably said to the poor people, you see this huge synagogue? See how wonderful and beautiful it is, all built of huge stones. Because these were massive buildings, even by today's standards. They would say to them, you see how beautiful and massive and impressive this is? Imagine now the one you'll be going to when you go to heaven, and everybody was, oh my God, so the one in heaven, the one in paradise is going to be bigger and better than this. Oh, I say yes. Build the one here as a reflection of the one that you're going to meet in the hereafter. And we see that this is still happening today. The money and the contributions that people give in religious organizations, whether it's churches, temples, synagogues, masjids, name it, shrines, whatever, majority of it is not used for charity. Majority of the money that is collected is not used for charity. Majority is used for the beautification, the erection and beautification of structures. So we have building funds, we have drives and things like that, and people building these churches with spires and things and bells and whose money is being used to build those things? And when you look at the foundations and the founders of these religions, did they do these things? No. Because even when you look at the story of Jesus the Christ, he was preaching and preaching and preaching, and then he noticed that people were hungry. He fed them. There's nowhere in the Bible you will read that Jesus, the historical figure, Jesus, the egregore, Jesus, any kind of Jesus in the Bible, built a church, asked for funds, and built a church. Nowhere. Jesus was a Jewish man. He went to the synagogues that were already there, the temples that were already there. And when he had to preach, he would preach in the countryside. He would preach out there in the streets where the ordinary people were. Remember now, I'm just relating the stories that's already existing in the Christian Bible. Never raise funds to build nothing. There's nowhere you will read in the Bible that Jesus raised funds. He never even raised funds to leave Jerusalem, to leave Israel, to go feed people in another country. But we do that today. Oh, can you give money? Let's go feed the hungry African children. Let's go feed the hungry Filipino children. Let's go feed the hungry Indian children. Let's go feed the hungry Peruvian children. And we leave where we are and we're going there to go feed these people. Jesus never did that. Jesus never raised money, raised funds, got resources, and left Israel to go and start taking care of others. He was focused on his own people. Okay. So We're looking at subversion. And that is what this woman in this story was doing with the resources that were given to her. Use the resources to feed the people in the household. And she subverted it. She had the power and she subverted it. She had the power, but she subverted it. And so here we have the husband fully stocking up the place, and she subverted all of that with her authority and her power. And that still goes on today. Even when you look at what are you saying? He never said, "Will a man rob God to get them to give?" That's true. Jesus never said, "Would you rob God?" But it is we who said that. And the other thing this man said in his TikTok, let me mention it before I forget. He said, if you go read the Bible for yourself and read the story of the widow's mite, you will never read there where Jesus said, do what this woman did, give everything you have to the temple. He never held her up as an example for people to emulate. And oftentimes, when you read the Christian Bible, he had instructions. He would tell people, okay, go to the town and preach, or go do this, go fast, or go into the boat, cast your net on the other side, catch fish. So he was a pretty precise person because he would say, go do this, go do that. But this man said there was nowhere in there where he said, do what this woman did. All he said is that this woman has given everything she has. She has nothing else. The little she had, she gave it all. She's given the greatest and the biggest. But he still didn't say to his followers, do what she did. I want you to do what she did. Instead, he was highlighting the deception and the subversion. Because you have rich people over there in that temple given just a small portion of what they had. But she came, she bought the whole story of that religion hook, line, and sinker. She was not taking care of the primary self. She was not even thinking about her own self preservation. She took everything she had and put it in there. And of course, there is no story to tell us how she managed her life after that. And to add to what that man said in his video, in that story, you don't see Jesus going to her and saying, oh, I noticed that you gave everything you have. Now, here, I'm going to give you something so that you will not have to beg for bread for the rest of your life, or I'm going to do this thing for you so, where you will never suffer in life again. Never did. He just pointed out what she was doing. He just pointed out the subversion. And, you think about it. Okay, because people say, "Oh no, what he was doing, he was pointing out how powerful her gift was, and she took the last she had and she gave it." And this is what a lot of preachers use to convince us to give, even when our own lives and livelihood are on the line. They use that to convince us to give, to empty our pockets. But you're reading that. Even Jesus himself, who was pointing out what that woman was doing, didn't reward her for it. He didn't go to her and praise her and give her a helping hand. He didn't say, okay, I notice you've given all that you got to give. Here, take this thing. You have oil. Remember Elijah and the Shulamite woman? She got a pot that kept on producing oil. This woman got nothing. But the Shulamite woman fed the prophet and got rewarded for feeding the prophet. The widow gave her all to the institution and never got rewarded for it. Big difference. She didn't get rewarded. So when we look at a story like this, it's a subversion of authority. And there are people in our lives who can subvert the authority they have in our lives to make us grow and to thrive and to blossom. But remember what I said before about tears. This orphan went to the back of the house and cried. And the magical bird came. And there was a witnessing. Where that motherless child could not speak for herself, the ancestors started speaking for her. They started speaking for her. You were saying her intention was his point, not the deed itself. Her intention was misplaced. Who in their right mind gives everything they have? You don't have any food left in the house, and you are taking the little you have and you're going to put it in the synagogue where they have more than enough. Matter of fact, the synagogue or that temple had food that could feed you as a widow. So her intention was misplaced. Her intention was misplaced. She had been deceived. The fact that I'm doing something with good intentions doesn't mean that it's good. I can do something and have good intentions, but it doesn't mean that it's good. Let's say, for instance, I go out to the intersection here and I see an auto accident and there are, some people affected by the auto accident. Let's assume that I have no CPR training, no first aid training, no healthcare training. But I'm going there and I'm seeing this person, they're laid out in the intersection, their car's wrecked, and I'm seeing them lying like this. And I'm like, oh, I will go and help this person and comfort them and rescue them from the intersection. And I go and grab that person. And I'm like, oh, let me, take you to my car. Suppose in the process of doing that, I break the person's neck. Or maybe their spinal cord was cut, but maybe just holding on with just a little bit of cord in there. And I went and grabbed this person and the rest of the spinal cord cut off. Or maybe their neck was like that and it was just holding on with just a little bit of ligament, and I in my infinite wisdom went and grabbed them. I had good intentions. I had good intentions. I had good intentions to go and rescue that person from the intersection, but my good intentions were not good. They were ill informed. My good intentions were ill informed because unless I have medical training, EMS training, I have no business going to mess with someone laid out in the middle of an intersection who had just succumbed to an auto accident. She was ill informed. And there are many of us who are going through life ill informed. Oh, I'm doing this for God. And your religious leader is driving a Rolls Royce. They're living in a big mansion. They're well fed. You are wondering how you're going to get your next meal. And somewhere in your ill informed mind, because you have been indoctrinated, because you've been programmed, you come to the conclusion that if I give everything that I have, God is going to reward me. And there's this magical thing that is going to happen. But we know from experience that that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen. We are called to use our common sense. And that man in his TikTok, I agree with him. He says, it is your obligation to read your Bible. It is your obligation to read it for yourself. It is your obligation. Because if you don't read it and you're there, I'm going to go by what somebody told me is in there. When you start suffering the consequences of blind obedience and ignorance, that person is not going to stand in for you. They will not stand in for you. They will let you take it. So, what I like about the story is that the father was very intentional. Feed my child. And he came back and looked to check. He checked, was this child fed? And he found out that the child had not been fed. The woman was on one side telling her lies. And so he was seeing the evidence of his eyes, but he was also getting false evidence in his ears. This speaks to the confusion of the senses. And what resolved the confusion of the senses was the magical bird, the messenger of the ancestors, the messenger of the spirits of the land. When you do not understand what you're looking at, when you don't understand what you're hearing, your best recourse is to rely on spirit. When you don't understand what your mind is telling you, when you are having cognitive dissonance, your best bet is to fall back on your spiritual crew. That's what this story is saying. Because here you have the wife on one hand telling lies. Oh, the child has a strange sickness. I don't know what's wrong with this child. And I've been trying to feed this child, and the child doesn't want to eat. And the child has been rejecting the food. I'm at my wits' end. You're well fed. Your children are well fed. Your children didn't get sick. Just the motherless child got sick. And so, what this captures is the man's confusion because he's like, part of him is saying, what she's saying makes sense. And many of us, when we're deciding upon the important challenges in our lives, we fall into this trap because we start thinking about it. And as we're thinking about it, we're trying to make sense of it. Sounds plausible, could be possible. Hmm. I mean, there's some sense of logic in it. Hmm. Could be true. And we fail to remember that we had issued a command to start with. Feed this child. I don't want to come back here and meet this child hungry. So that bird had to come back and remind him of his original command. And his original command was this child must be fed. This child must be fed. There, there are, and let me give a trivial example. There are sometimes you see some relationship experts on social media, and they will give you advice how to get a man, how to get a woman, how to get a boyfriend, how to get a husband, how to get a wife, how to get a girlfriend. Why is it that a lot of them do not follow their own advice? And when you get to know them, you'll get to hear the hidden part of their stories. There, there's just like fiasco going on there. You might wake up one day and they say, "Oh yeah, I've been married for 5 years and now I'm getting divorced." And you start wondering, but this person was giving relationship advice. How did they end up here? And they say, "Oh," and they'll, put out a press statement saying, "Oh, we outgrew each other. We're we're parting amicably. We're parting as friends." The reason why we who set ourselves up as experts often fail the demonstration of that expertise is because we too forget. We forget. You will see a person who says to you, "Here's dating advice. If you meet a man who does this, do this. If he doesn't do this, do this." But she herself will forget to follow that advice because once you are in the thick of an experience, it is very difficult to remember instructions. It's hard. You see somebody, they'll get all kinds of training for some kind of emergency, and the emergency comes and they forget. And you're like, "What's wrong with you? You got trained on this." Yeah, there's a difference between practice and theory. The man issued the command, "Feed all my children. Make sure my motherless child is fed." He comes home and meets this child malnourished, emaciated. And the wife is there telling him a story. "Oh, the child has a strange illness. The child doesn't want to eat. I've tried everything within my power to feed the child. The child didn't want to eat." And he starts getting confused because now the mind takes over and the mind starts reasoning. It could be this. She could be right. Maybe she's telling the truth. Maybe there's something wrong with the child. So it had to take the presence of that magical bird, the voice of the ancestors, to remind him of his original instruction: feed this child. This child was not fed. Your instructions were not followed. And once that magical bird said that, he got back into alignment. And that's why he got angry. And so this is why I've said in some other classes, and I'll repeat it here, you can't rely on your mind to tell you the truth. You cannot rely on your mind to tell you the truth. You cannot rely on your mind to tell you the truth because your mind will rationalize. Your mind will choose the path of of least resistance. Your mind will guide you to avoid discomfort because that's what the mind is designed to do. The primary function of your mind is to ensure your survival by any means necessary. So even if it means you need to be deceived, your mind will deceive you. Because the primary function of your mind is to ensure your survival. The primary function of your mind is not to tell you the truth. And people get that confused. "Oh no, I, 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 I will go by what my mind says. I do the first thing that comes to my mind." How many times have you done the first thing that comes to your mind and it turned out to be a mistake? That's not what the mind is designed for. And remember, those of you who attended, was it level one? The level one retreat with me. We went through this. Going through the procedure through which the mind makes decisions. We usually will sit and look at something And say, I will do what my mind tells me to do. Okay. So you did what your mind told you to do. Why did it turn out the way it turned out? The reason why that widow gave her last mite was because her mind had been fucked over by the religious leaders. So she believed in her mind, if I give my last money, my last mite, I will be blessed. I will see and experience the favor of God. I will give my mite. I will give all the money I have. Because in her mind, which had been programmed by her religion, this was the right thing to do. Her mind had been fucked over. And many of us, our minds have been fucked over. There's nothing to be ashamed of. It is the reality. It is a reality. Many of us are moving through this life with fucked over minds. And so we're making these decisions based on the programming we have received, thinking that is the right thing to do. And we're unable to tell the difference between the right thing to do and programming. The woman giving her last mite believed that that was the right thing for her to do because, again, her mind said, if you do what your Pharisees and Sadducees have told you to do, which is to give everything that you have, you are ensuring your survival. If you give everything, God is going to favor you. And if God favors you, you are ensuring your survival. That's logical. Sounds logical to me. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do anything I can do to ensure my survival. So if the pastor, if the imam, if the sheikh, if the alfa, if the baba, if the yeye, if the ya, if the palero, if the santero, if the there goes my Spanish, cuarendissimo, tells me that this is what I need to do in order to move forward, in order to survive, that's what I'm going to do. And I'm not going to check in with my own spiritual crew. I'm going to blindly do what I have been told to do. And the mind says, yes, that's what you should do. Because if you do this thing, you will survive. If you do this thing, you will not die. Because we avoid that and move towards life. We our mind guides us towards life and away from not life. So we're always doing something that we think will preserve our lives and give us life and enhance our lives. That's programming. That's programming. And that's why when you have baby ducks, it happens with animals. You can have a baby duck, you can have baby deer, you can have creatures. They will form an attachment to the first creature that feeds them. And so, if the baby ducks or baby chicken or whoever see you as the source of their sustenance, they will follow you. They're not going to look at you and say, why do you look the way you do and we look different? That's why sometimes you will see a cat may have kittens, and maybe there's a little puppy there, a motherless puppy, and the puppy will start suckling with the kittens, and then after a while, the dog will be following that cat around. Cat is not sitting, the dog is not there saying, "Why is it that I look different from this cat?" Remember the story of the ugly duckling? The ugly duckling didn't know it was a swan because he had been hatched with ducks. So there's no reasoning there. The duckling never woke up one day and say, why am I different? Why am I bigger? And even though the other ducks made fun of him and said, "Oh, you look at your neck is too long. You're too huge. You're too," he kept on shrinking himself trying to fit. That's programming. So when that widow was giving that mite, was programming. If I give this mite, God will bless me. If God blesses me, I will live long. I will have something to eat. Straight line logic. She wasn't giving that last mite, saying to herself, if I give this mite, then I will get a creative idea how I can start a business. And if I start this business, I can make more money. And then if I make more money, I can hire people and make more money. That wasn't her thought process. It wasn't her thought process. So we have to start learning how to get away from this programming. Now, we can't 100% get away from mental programming because we exist and are able to navigate this world through multiple hundreds of programs and sub-programs we carry in our heads. It is programming that allows you to brush your teeth. It is programming that lets you to eat. So you don't have to start learning every day. How do I hold the spoon? How do I scoop the food with the spoon? How do I lift the spoon with the food to my lips? That's a program. So your brain automatically runs that. So you already know once you're presented with food, you go get a spoon, you dig into it, you feed yourself. You don't have to learn that new skill every day. So programming is necessary. But we have to be like these AI agents like ChatGPT. ChatGPT, you can go to ChatGPT and say, I want you to identify the errors in your thinking, and it will do that. So let's say you were going through something with ChatGPT. You ask ChatGPT a question and then, it goes through and gives you an answer. You can say, I want you to go through this answer you just gave me, pick out the flaws, pick out the mistakes, pick out the false assumptions, identify them, and self correct. ChatGPT, Claude, Copilot, Gemini, all these AI agents, they will do that. They will check themselves and they'll say, okay, the error I'm seeing in my earlier output was I made an assumption of this, and my assumption of this was wrong, and my assumption of the other thing was wrong. Therefore, based on the revision and the identification of the errors in my thinking, here's the new output. And so we should be able to do that for ourselves. And if you can't do it for yourself, you look for somebody to help you to do that. Okay. Did you enjoy today's story? Did you learn anything from today's story? If you're late joining us, we just went through the story of the wicked co-wife and the singing bird. Okay. Thank you, sweet mommy. What did you learn from the story and the discussion that followed? What did you learn? I'm putting I'm putting sweet mommy on the hot spot. I'm putting her in the hot seat. What did you learn? Okay, Miss Kiona, what did you learn? Miss Rosemary Postles, what did you learn? Y'all saying yes. I'm putting you in the hot spot now. What did you learn? In a short sentence, what did you learn from the story? How can you apply it to your own life and to your own experience? Okay, Miss Rosemary says, I always thought my first mind was right. Many of us do. Do you know? Okay, like there are many of us who are fasting now. Do you know there are times I sit here, I'm busy, and then it gets time to close the fast, and I'm saying, I know exactly what I want to eat. I know exactly what I want to eat, and what I'm going to eat is going to be good, is going to be nutritious, and I say to myself, where should I go now? And I do have a thought, and maybe it's like, no, don't cook for yourself today, or don't cook for the family today. Go and cook, go and eat out. And then in my mind, I'm like, okay, where should I go? Where should I go? And then a place pops in my mind. Okay. Then I will go there. And when I go there, the food would be horrible. That was my first mind. So one of the challenges is understanding, and this is why, some of us went through that human design. You have to understand the best way to make decisions. And for many people, is not the first thing that pops in your head. For many people, it is not the first thing that pops in your head. If something pops in your head, you have to have a reliable way of checking that thing that popped in your head. You have to have a reliable way of checking it. So whether that checking is through a spiritual consultation, a divination, whether it's through talking to somebody else, sometimes checking it could involve waiting for confirmation. And people have different styles depending on, their structure, how to best make decisions for themselves. Mm. Okay, Miss Kiana says, I learned that the ancestors will be our ally and intervene on our behalf when we all we can do is cry. Okay. They're not going to intervene if there's something you can do about it. And you're sitting there crying because there are people who can do something about their situation, but crying is the easiest thing they can do. If I want to go out and eat a burger and I can get up, get into my vehicle, and go get myself a burger. Will the ancestors resonate with me and intervene if I just sit down here in this room and cry? The reason why the crying is working for these orphans is because they are helpless. The person who can feed them is not feeding them. The person who has the power over their lives is not life enhancing. That's why their tears work. But if I'm at a bad job and I'm sitting there crying at that bad job and will not leave that bad job, your ancestors are not going to intervene because you can get up and go look for another job. Oh, but I like this job, and this job is close to my house, and this is the first job I got, and I'm not sure I will get another job. But you have options. You may not like going to work at Mickey D's, but it's an option. So sitting there and crying and accepting whatever comes your way from your supervisor, manager, or colleagues is not going to invite the intervention of your ancestors. I hope you understand what I'm saying. Okay. One lesson is the importance of having a witness. In general, it's important. But what happens if you don't? Okay, Miss Anna Kaiga says a good reminder that our spirit guides are always ready to help us. I would agree with that. I would agree with that. Okay, folks. Well, thank you for coming to class. Make sure you register. Um, Secure your seat for the retreat starting next week and the week after that. Don't come crying and complaining later if I decide to go on vacation and leave you to your devices. Okay, so make sure, because I think once I do these retreats, I'm going to pivot and do some other kinds of workshops and retreats after this because these are heavy duty retreats, inner work. So, and I'm going to participate this time. So it's heavy duty. It's just heavy duty. You're welcome, Mrs. Allen. We're thankful to our Creator, our guardian spirits, our ancestors, and our spirit guides for today's lesson in forbidden foods. May it not be wasted in our lives. Ashe. Say.